Hey, welcome back to another episode of the OnAire Podcast. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Taylor.
And here we are talking about combustible dust once again.
Surprise, surprise.
Here, that's what we do. So today we got an awesome guest, Diane Cave, who has just a couple of decades of combustible dust experience. She's got that 28-year-old mentality, but she's been doing this for quite a while.
She's not going to like that.
No, she's not going to like that.
Oh, well.
But anyway, we had a great time talking to her, trying to pull some information from her about her vast experience in the combustible dust world, and a lot of time spent on DHAs and what you can do to make them better for your organization and get your bang for your buck when it comes to DHAs.
Yeah, I mean, they're not easy documents, and even being in the dust space, sometimes they can be really confusing to us. Just kind of understanding, one of her more important things is just the understanding of language, and how we are intentional about the things that we say, and kind of that mindset where, clarity is kindness. And the same thing is in a DHA. Should we say should we, or shall we, or may we, or could we? We'll find out. We'll talk about noodly stuff, noodly language, and even some uses for your pie dishes as well.
That's right. As we try to climb Dust Mountain with Diane Cave. Here you go. Check it out. Lights are on. Mics are hot. Here we go. Welcome back to the OnAire OnAire Podcast. Today we're talking to Diane Cave. Diane, welcome to the OnAire Podcast.
Good day, guys. Good day. Thank you for having me.
Well, we were just talking about our inner geekness.
Yeah, we were talking about not making things too nerdy, and with two professional engineers, another engineer, and just like all kinds of things. And like we're the podcast about dust. You can't get away from it. So we're just going to embrace it.
Embrace it. What was it you said, Diane?
Geekness is not a weakness.
Not a weakness.
I mean, geeks and nerds run the world now, so,
And here we are. Look at us now.
Yeah, exactly. So,
We got a cool flashing light too.
That's right.
Well,
all right,
yeah.
So we're talking about dust and all things dust, as we always do here on the OnAire Podcast. So Diane has over 20 years of experience in dust and combustible dust. So Diane, how did you get started down the path of dust? I'm sure as a kid growing up, you probably did not go, I want to play with dust for a living. Like that's what I aspired to do.
So I have a really kind of weird story, I guess, as to how I got started in the field. I was working at, so I'm in Canada, and I was working at a Canadian Tire, the customer service desk of Canadian Tire. So that's kind of like Lowe's. Or Home Depot, that kind of thing, minus the appliances. Anyhow, and this guy came in and he needed a part, and I made fun of him. And it ended up that in Canada you wear a ring on your pinky finger of your working hand, right? So I'm left-handed, so it's on my. And so he threw the thing at me to take it out of the package, and I caught it with my left hand. And he was like, "Oh, you're an engineer," because you get your ring in May, and then in March, and then I graduated in May. And I was like, "Oh, well, aren't you brilliant? Aren't you smart?" I've always been a little bit chippy. and he was like, "What are you doing working here?" And I'm like, "Well, I got to pay my way through school and blah, blah, blah." And so then he was like, "Well, where'd you apply?" And, I have an engineering company, and why didn't you apply at my company? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, whatever. And so he kept coming back into Canadian Tire. When I was working, he brought his wife in to meet me and whatnot. And then he kept saying that he was going to hire me. And then eventually I went down to their office, and I just kind of said, my rent, like my lease is up in a couple of months, and I got to figure out what to do. So if you're going to hire me, then you need to hire me, or otherwise I'm going to go like out to the oil patch or something like that. And he was just kind of like, whoa, like, young kids out of school don't do that sort of thing. Right. And so then like a week later, he came back into Canadian Tire, and he was like, "That was July 13th." And I was like, "I don't know. It's a lovely day in the summer, like whatever." And he was like, "Well, it'll be your start date." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then this is what he did. And so I worked for him for 15 years. And then after 15 years, I just kind of, I needed to prove to myself that I could make it on my own merits, kind of thing. And then it was hard, a very hard decision to make, and it wasn't It wasn't easy at all. And then left kind of working with him and under his umbrella and to where I am now at Element 6.
Love it.
So, yeah. So.
No, what an awesome story. I thought we had a long interview process. Little did I know.
Yeah.
We just need to be hitting up Home Depot and Lowe's more often.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because the company that I worked for at that time, they had other people that came in to interview, and they had like histories of working at Canadian Tire, and then they like hired them automatically just because they worked at Canadian Tire. And I was like, it doesn't mean everyone that works there has any ambition. Like,
it's a correlation, not causation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's really cool. So how did you get into like the combustible dust space though?
So the gentleman that had hired me from Canadian Tire, that's what he did. Like he worked in combustible dust and sorry, my computer's doing funny things. There we go. So he worked in combustible dust and he worked in dust collection and all those good things. So because that's what he did, and he was looking for, the next person to like his protege or whatnot, if you will, and so then I kind of came along, and it's really weird because I used to think that he was old when he hired me, but my birthday was Saturday, and I turned that age that he was when he hired me. I was like, oh, so now I'm old, I guess. So anyway, yeah.
Now you know how the college graduates are looking at you.
Yeah. But in my head, I'm still 28, so it's okay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
I think we all are.
I don't think mentally you ever get past that. It's not like you're like, oh, this week I'm 35. No, you're always just 28.
That's right. Loving every minute of it. So, where do you spend most of your time these days when it comes to dust? Where do you spend? What's your focus? Where you at? What you working on?
So I'm probably about a 50-50 office to site split. Mm-hmm. And so lately we've been the last couple of years, been doing a lot of work in the grain world. But with some sawdust sprinkled in or wood manufacturing, I guess, because it's not all sawdust, sprinkled in, and then just kind of some odds and sods of other things all over the place. Because it's really, the market is huge because there's such a demand for it, because there's so many people that make dust and whatnot. But the amount of professionals out there that know what they're doing, and as I've learned, that aren't a pain in the butt to work with. That's apparently another big quality, that I'm apparently not a pain in the butt. Then you're sought after. So we're really lucky in that respect, and we don't have to pound and knock on too many doors, because you just get a lot of referrals and phone calls and what I like to call repeat offenders.
Yeah, the soft skills will take you far, Diane. Keep up the good work.
Oh, especially as an engineer. Just anytime you know that you're going to be working with one, you just have this default mindset of what you're walking into. You're going to have a very bland, a very dry conversation. Yep. You're going to have to talk about some numbers and whatnot. So yeah, that is definitely one of the biggest hurdles, like even we face, like with going into different type of dusty environments and whatnot. So when they find out we're humans, it's actually pretty nice and makes it easier for us to work with. But can you tell, me and Jordan know what you do, but can you talk a little bit more about what you do with Element 6?
What I do at Element 6. So I have a group, which is nice because it hasn't always been that way. So there's a group of us now. And so I ultimately oversee them. Some people in the group have been in the field almost 10 years, and some are just new, as in we have a new guy that just started this month. So we're kind of like a varied collective group. And so in terms of what we do, or what I do, so I'm ultimately overseeing to make sure that all the clients are happy. That's my end goal. My goal is to make them look good and to make sure that they're happy and safe and meet their objectives is ultimately what it comes down to. And so we spend, like I said, about 50% of the time on site. So site time can be for conducting DHAs. So we do a fair amount of dust hazard assessments where I like to say that I just go and wave my hands a lot and make a bunch of notes, take some pictures, and teach people stuff. And then I give them a report. So DHA, yeah. So we do a lot of DHAs, or we could be doing electrical area classification stuff. We could be collecting information for doing system design. So we do. We'll put in new systems. We don't supply, like, we don't rep or supply any equipment directly. I like the ability to be disconnected from suppliers. We have people that we like to work with because they supply good products and they're not a pain in the butt to work with. And there's a good rapport back and forth, as in sometimes they need help and sometimes we need help, and we can help each other out in terms of like exchange of information and whatnot. So we could be there collecting information for a new design or retrofitting an existing system, which is what I was doing last week in Long Island, New York. And we also do vessel strength analysis. So sometimes we're on site getting all the measurements for that and material thicknesses to basically figure out what a P-red is. What else do we do on site? We do training and troubleshooting and startup and commissioning of systems. Old systems, new systems, or retrofitted systems. And then if I'm in the office, which doesn't happen nearly enough, it seems, then it's, writing the dreaded report, the DHA report, and reviewing design work, and having, it seems, meetings. Everyone wants to talk to me when I'm in the office. And then putting together like design packages and that sort of thing to make sure that we can get the designs and the information out to the folks that need it.
Love it. So I've got, talk nerdy to me. I've got my handy dandy copy of NFPA 660 here. Never leave home without it. How has this new standard changed what you're doing?
How's it changed it? I wouldn't say that it's changed it a whole lot. Because really there hasn't been there's been a few things that have changed, but it's pretty much the same thing repackaged, right? They've just taken like 5? Is it 4 of them or 5 codes, smashed them all together, got rid of some redundant stuff, and put it all together. So there's with that. So it hasn't changed anything. What I miss is I want a PDF copy that I can like search through because I travel so much. So I like to be able to do it on airplanes and whatnot. And I haven't gotten my head around using the linked stuff because I think you can do that with link on and off line. But so far there isn't that many changes that have occurred in the actual like material and stuff that's in there. There's a few things that used to be there that aren't, and new stuff that's appeared. But overall, it hasn't changed anything. I think it makes things. I think it's probably made things a little easier because it's all in one spot, and redundancies are gone by the wayside. We're starting to. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's been our experience as well. Just having everything in one place to go, one source of truth. To go get answers, I think has been a great move by NFPA, and I appreciate the hard work that they put into writing this thing and getting it all synced up.
Yeah, I think we'll probably all lose our minds when they do the first like real revision through.
I can tell you one thing that is like it's a good thing, but is kind of frustrating for me. Is like I knew what our code number was like every single time, and so I could say 9.6.3, and then here's the little sub bullets below here where I can explain to you like why this has to be interlocked and all of those other little things. I had to come get your book out of your office Friday, and you weren't here, and so I had to start flipping through. I had to check that we were the same section,
right? But
it's changed by like one number. Yeah, it's 9.5.3 or something now. But anyways, yeah, I do agree. I think it's great that they've compiled it all into one space. And then one thing that we even got in on is a little bit of this language change. And that's something that we wanted to talk to you about because you wrote a really great article about these kind of, they seem like very minor differences in wording, but they mean a very different thing. And so can you talk to us a little bit about your article?
Words matter.
the soft language, the noodle language,
Yeah.
the wet noodle language.
Yep.
So in what I do, or in the field that I'm in or whatnot, you often get asked to review someone else's DHA. Here, like a client will read this and what do you think? And so often it's like, it's limp language. Like it's just kind of like, meh, it's just there, right? And it doesn't really, it gives, the end user doesn't, they want direction. So it's like I said in the article, where these people are making something, whatever, that's their specialty and what they do. So whether they're making widgets or they're making, I don't know, 2x4s or dog beds or whatever it is that they're making, they don't necessarily have an expertise in combustible dust, and they just want a hit list of what they need to do. So they need to know. So if you write in there, it would be a good idea to.
That's not
Cool.
getting done.
Yeah.
That's
So
never getting done.
I always go back to when I was a kid, and we would be home. Like, so I have a brother, and so my brother and I would be home in the summers, and we'd be like, playing soccer, doing whatever. And Dad would be like, "Well, if you're looking for something to do, right, you can cut the grass." And then he'd come home, and he's like, "Why isn't the grass cut?" And we're like, "We weren't looking for something to do.
Yeah.
Like, we found plenty to do." And it's it's like, so then it changed to cut the grass, or weed the garden, or whatever. And it's the same thing with the DHA. So tell the end user what you want. So if this is required, tell them it's required. You've got to do this. You have to do this. Don't consider it, because you could stand there and be like, okay, yeah, I've thought about it. It's going to be a lot of money. I've now considered it. I've checked the box. Move on. So you need to be concise, and you need to be direct about it. As much as no one likes to do that, because it scares people in the reports, but the folks reading the reports need to know that.
Yeah, it's either an issue that needs to be solved, or it's a non-issue.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
One way or the other. So.
And so I've started now my DHAs I have the requirements and recommendations section. And so there's a whole section of, this is what you got to do, and this is your whole list of requirements. And the recommendations are things that we think is a good idea, because it's, maybe it will improve the safety or the runnability or the longevity of your equipment. But it's not a requirement, but would be, a good idea to do. And so people have found that quite helpful, the reports. Then there's no questions of, well, do I have to do this? Do I not have to do it? It's like, they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
Love it.
we run into that. I mean, even with producing equipment and whatnot, like when we were getting certifications done, we're like, do we actually need to do this? And they're kind of like, well, it would be nice. And then they still made us do it. I'm like, just tell me up front. Like,
Right.
I wouldn't do all this back and forth. Because yeah, I buy a lot of the equipment here, and if somebody says you should probably do that, I'll look at it, I'll price it, but I'm not going to do it.
Well, especially if you're talking about, it's a good idea to put in a suppression system. So if you're talking about a bucket elevator that's, 100 feet tall, then you're probably going to have to, because bucket elevators are not usually built terribly well in terms of strength, because we've done a whole lot of finite element analysis on bucket elevators, and they require usually a whole big pile of protection on them. So then if somebody's looking at, so we're going to have to shut down, we're going to have to put reinforcing on this, and then put in like $100,000 plus of gear on this bucket elevator. And the recommendation is you should consider it. It's like, I've considered it, and it's a buttload of money, and it's a pain in the butt.
That's right.
And yeah, done. But if you then change the should consider it to it must be done, then they go, oh, guess I'll put in a CapEx.
Yep. I think soft language and gray areas create fog, confusion, and leave a gap in safety. And
Yeah.
I appreciate your attention to detail on this. And
Well, thank you.
I think it's a big deal. I think manufacturers and employers need to be aware of that and understand what the difference is in that language and how important it is.
Yeah, and I think that people that are writing any sort of an assessment report, so like that's what a DHA is, right? It's an assessment of combustible dust hazards. And so whether you're So writing a DHA or a system assessment or an electrical area classification or whatever it is, the people that are writing it have to be cognizant of that and make sure that they're using the right language that's going to direct the people how they need to be directed, right? To make sure that you're not inadvertently creating loopholes for people to get in and around and whatnot, especially when it comes to safety.
Yep. And so talking about DHAs, so I have this conversation with a lot of people too is, hey, have you done a DHA? Nah, you should do that. Well, it's kind of like says who? Like who's enforcing that? So in the real world, who is enforcing DHAs and where do you see that driven from for people to do a DHA?
I wrote an article about this as well, but it was for a Canadian magazine. Anyway, so it's like...
It hasn't migrated south for the winter yet.
No, not yet. But it was... The idea was that exactly that. So like why should you do a DHA? So I know in Canada, there's been the Department of Labor has come along and told various facilities. They've come in and gone into the facilities and they've got dust up to the their knees kind of thing, and they've been told that they need to do DHAs. So we've had that kind of enforcement in Canada. I don't know if it has. I haven't done any in the U.S. for like as mandated by a governing body. So I don't know if they have the ability to do that. In most cases, all the DHAs I've conducted in the States have been like a corporate initiative.
Okay.
And so, and a lot of them are because there's been incidences at their facilities, like within their organization, and they're scared into doing it, I guess would be the way to say it, or they've suddenly realized that, it can happen to them. Like an incident can happen to them, and which is unfortunate. But I mean, in their cases, nobody got hurt or injured. It was just a loss of property in process. So, but I don't like who's actually enforcing it. I don't know, because there isn't enough people to like get into all the facilities to then look at documentation and be like, oh, do you have your DHA? I want to see, you like your file trail or your paper trail kind of thing. And there just isn't the people to enforce it to do anything in the US. And in Canada, I know that the ones that have been enforced was the Department of Labor was there looking at something else. Like they were like OSHA does spot checks in the US, right? So, so they came and they were doing a spot check on something else. And they're like, whoa, this place is really dusty. Do you have a DHA? And they went, no. And they're like, well, here's your order to go do one. So,
that's good to hear.
The other people that are pushing for it is insurers, because with all this crazy weather business that's going on in the world, and all kinds of uncertainty, insurers are trying more and more to lower the risk, right? Yeah. And so we've had in the wood industry in particular, all across Canada and the U.S., insurers have been refusing to insure sawmills because of if they deem them too unsafe and whatnot. And then it starts with a DHA, and then they've got to like implement the outcomings from the DHA and be making strides and then once they do that, then they'll get insured.
It really is a great tool to do the analysis, to understand what you're working with, and then suddenly it's in front of you and you have to do something with it. You have to choose to address it or not at that point. But at least it's on paper, it's in front of you, and you can recognize the hazards, and then you can have an open discussion with your leadership, with your funding, with the AHJs and insurance companies as well.
Yeah, that's one of the more interesting things. And then hearing you talk about, how this kind of plays out in Canada is it really does come down to that like safety business where it's personal, where, we're not having people knocking on our doors, like coming in and say, give me your paperwork, where's your DHA or whatever. But for the sake of property and process, but then more importantly, here over the last little bit where we've had these incidents here in the Midwest and up in Pennsylvania and things where it's like people's lives are at stake for this. And, as goofy as it sounds or whatever, like dust causes so much of a problem where we have to have this thing in place. And there was an arbitrary September date last year where there was a requirement where you had to have it done. And we would see people at trade shows, or we would have phone calls with them, and we're like, have you guys done it? This is coming up. And they're like, what are you even talking about? Like, we're not doing this unless like insurance or my boss says I have to. And so, I don't know how you convince people outside of seeing like a tragedy that this is important.
You had to do the right thing.
The one time, so I'm normally quite pleasant. I don't burn bridges, but I'm also not going to get like pushed around and pushed over. Like, I always tell people I'm not a yes man. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say yes and and I'm not a dude. Anyhow, so I don't fall into either one of those categories. And so I was at a site doing a DHA, and the guy that was running the general manager of the facility, he was checking a box. Somebody was forcing him to check a box, and it was super. He was very aggressive about the fact that I should also back up and say that they had blown up like every piece of equipment at their facility, minus like a dryer, but he was still convinced that there wasn't a combustible dust hazard. And so we're sitting in a room, and like all his maintenance people are there, and I was just like I've had enough. I just looked at him and I was like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing this? Are we doing this to like, you want to improve the safety, or are you doing it? And I list off, and then the final one that I list off is like, are you just doing this to check a box? And he goes, I'm just doing it to check a box. And then his maintenance team is sitting there, and then I just turned to them and I'm like, you guys should all be really scared. I was like, because this guy is gambling with your life. You guys have blown up stuff left, right, and center. And he's sitting here being like, oh, it's all in your head. It's not a problem, blah, blah, blah. You're just doing this because this is what you do. And I was like, and somebody's going to die. and then I was like, and then I turned back to the general manager. I'm like, you want to check a box? And let's check a box and let's get this done. So they have to call me back for work.
And that's one of those cases where he doesn't want to see the report, because then he's going to be responsible for having to fix those things and address those issues. Then it's going to be his problem. Then it's going to be his butt on the line if something does happen.
Yeah, so that's the only time that I've like openly just been like this, I can't handle like enough, and just outright burnt the bridge. So, and the maintenance guys were all sitting there. Their eyes were just massive and huge because they didn't understand what the hazards were and what the risk was, and so
that's the sad part, because like Jordan was just saying, it's like once we have it, you have to do something with it, or you're liable. I mean, in some senses, like we've seen in some of these explosions where they have done the like post-op on it, and people have gone to jail because they were forging documents, or they have said, yes, we're doing this mitigation program, or yes, we should, maybe could do some of these things, and then we didn't. And then that caused somebody to lose their life, and now they're responsible.
And so not so much now, but I would say maybe 5 years ago, you get the question, so who's liable if, you're sitting there and I always have like a closeout meeting, and usually one of the money counters always show up and whatnot. And, and so you're sitting there and you're going through everything and this, that, and whatnot, and all the things, like the good and the bad and the ugly. And then somebody will ask, well, so who's responsible if something happens? And I'm like, it's whoever said no, knowing what the consequences were.
Wow.
And they're all like sitting there. And so I turned to the money guy and I was like, and that means you. So if you're saying no because it's too much money, but you understand that you could, this could be the casualty fallout or what could happen because of it, then it's your neck that's on the line. Yeah. And so suddenly they're more willing to do something when they realize that they can be personally responsible for it.
It's a big weight.
Yeah, it's really refreshing though when you work with a company that already knows that, and then they're like, we know we can't do everything all at once, but we want to start with the bad stuff and get things better, and then they're actively making strides, and they're all working together for that one collective goal to make sure that everyone makes it home the same way that they came in that day.
Wow. Yeah, because sometimes I feel like we get pinned in that where we work with insurance companies, and they actively will push our product in some instances. There are some industries where it's a requirement that you have our product or similar installed in order to get insurance, just because they know it works for that industry that well. But we'll know pretty quick when it's like, hey, just send me a quote. Yeah. But we do full system design, and we're like, okay, well, let's talk about your process. And then no. Just give me a number and give me a quote. And so it's like, okay.
Yeah.
You're definitely just checking a box.
In the box.
Yep. And the box checkers are the hard ones to work with. Yeah. That's for sure.
It's a culture thing. It's a mindset thing. And we talk about culture quite a bit on here, but I think once you get into that type of scenario, it's hard to overcome that. I've had people tell me that their wood shop is more likely to get struck by lightning than have a combustible dust event. And it's like...
So what I always say to that is I always call it the dust lottery. And so they'll sit there and they'll say something like that. Well, what are the chances? I was like, do you buy lottery tickets? And they're like, yeah, of course I buy lottery tickets. And I'm like, cool. So have you won? So it's Lotto Max is what it is here in Canada. I was like, have you won the Lotto Max? Or if I'm in the States, like the Mega Bucks or whatever it is. And they're like, no, because if I'd won it, I wouldn't be here. And I'm like, yeah, well, you haven't won the dust lottery yet. And it's a lottery you don't want to win.
Yeah.
And so it's not a question... Like it can happen, and your stars just have to align. Same reason you win the lottery. So, you're gunning to win the mega bucks, but you're not gunning to win the dust lottery.
Yeah.
And when you kind of put it into perspective like that, then they're just kind of like, oh, okay, like, okay. So
I can't believe there are people that will play that lottery all day.
Oh yeah. Yep. 100%. Like I've been in places where it would shut down Friday midnight to then clean for the weekend, and then they would start up Monday, like the start of Monday midnight, and then they would run. And so I was on site at like 10 a.m. on Tuesday kind of thing, and we're trudging through dust that's just below my knees. And it's all combustible and whatnot. And then, so the guy that was taking us around, or my babysitters, I like to call them. So I said to him, I was like, so, when Friday, when you shut down, is the dust, about this deep? And I just kind of like stuck my arm straight out from my shoulder. So I'm like 5'6" and some change. And so the dust level would be like close to somewhere between 4.5 and 5 feet.
Oh,
and he just goes, yeah. Like I'm an idiot for asking, but so they had places where they would have like drifts of dust that were close to 5 feet deep, and to them it was normal because that's just their culture. Like this is the dust culture, safety culture, whatever you want to call it in the facility.
Yeah, that's insane. And because we talk to people when they're at trade shows, and they're like, "Oh, this is exactly what I need because I do all this stuff, and I use like my air compressor." Or I get a broom, or I pay the guys all the money to bring in the vacuums and whatnot. So this would be great. And then they don't do anything.
And you never hear from them.
Yeah. So it's just that it's definitely a culture thing about how they try to solve their problem. Which brings up another article that you just wrote, because we got sent all of your stuff before this. And so we are well versed.
We know your material better than you do at this point.
Except the stuff that hasn't made it south for the winter. So, but I'll send you.
That's right.
I'll send you the one on why to do a DHA. I'll send it to you.
Oh, yes. We would love that. Yeah. But you put out one recently on blowdowns with compressed air.
Compressed air relocation program?
Yes. And so one of my favorite lines in there, I love the way you write also.
Well, thank you.
But one of my favorite lines in there is that there's a time and place for everything, but the time is not always, and the place is not everywhere.
Yeah.
And so can you tell us a little bit about kind of what you've seen in industry with compressed air? Because we see this all the time. They're like, oh yeah, I go down and we shut down and we blow everything down and then we keep going. But can you just talk a little bit about that?
you see kind of like everything across the like right across the board, right? So there's some places. I was at one this fall where they had a lot of dust, fine dust. It's a wood processing facility, and they like everything is clean with compressed air, and they just like start at the top and blow down. But there's so much dust sitting around that really by the time they get down to the next level, they're blowing it up to the level above, and they just kind of don't understand why they have why the dust is just kind of keeps churning around. And I'm like, well. You are experts in the dust relocation program, right? And like, I don't know, you see places and they've got like a strategic map on how to clean with compressed air, as opposed to just figuring out where the dust is coming from and then stopping it.
Yeah.
So you'll be in some facilities and they'll have like these gaping holes in conveyor covers or bins, or like every time the process presses, you know what I mean? Like there's a pressure change, then you've got like the dust spurting out all over the place, and it's like, well, if you just fix that, seal it maybe, then you wouldn't have this big pile of dust that you then trying to relocate with compressed air. The other big one is people like moving dust through the facility. So they take and they'll use compressed air to blow it into a pile, and then they take and they'll shovel it onto a conveyor or whatnot. And then that conveyor basically takes it all the way through the facility. And by the time it gets to the other end of the facility to dump it outside or dispose of it or whatnot, they've lost half of it all through like leaking conveyors and whatnot, all through the place. So before you start cleaning, it's like you should figure out where your dust is coming from and fix that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Like, I'm like, you could spend, just spend a day patching holes and it would probably save you a week's worth of cleaners. Like,
right. So my favorite story about compressed air cleanup, we talked to a potential customer who they're in the grain industry and they supply material to one of the large chip manufacturers, like potato chip manufacturers.
Yep.
And he told me they spend $250,000 a year, $250,000, bringing in water to cool the compressors that they use in their cleanup program.
Then why wouldn't they just like spend that money to fix their dust collection and where the dust is coming from?
That's a great question.
That's a $250,000
and
question.
I think was the first question I asked. But I think people just get into this mindset of like, well, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
And we have a documented process that is an answer to our insurance's questions and is posted somewhere in the building. And if I had to go find it, I could to show the OSHA inspector that we have a process. But they just do it, and that's it. And that doesn't, you're not even getting into the labor question and the safety question and opportunity costs and all of that. No, it's just like we pay a lot of money for water to cool stuff down.
I think that's why sometimes having like the external people come in to do something like a DHA or whatnot, and then you have that external person that just stands there and goes, "Why? Like why?"
Yeah.
Like, okay, so what's your cleanup process? And then they go through and whatnot. It's like, cool, but why do you do it this way?
Yeah.
Or the fact that it's like the people like to clean where they can reach, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times walls are cleaned to about the 7 foot mark.
Yeah.
And then after that, then they get like this caking. Another thing that drives me crazy, which is not related to compressed air, is people like to paint surfaces the same color as the dust. Like,
you can't see it; it's not there.
Yeah, like I don't know how many wood or grain facilities I'm in and have been in that are painted beige, and it's like, hey, go with a green or blue or red or anything, but so you can see the dust. So I don't know how many times I've been in a plant where I'm like, well, why are your walls clean only to 7 feet? And they're like, well, we have a cleaning program and and they're supposed to clean. I'm like, they're supposed to. Yeah, but they're clearly not.
That was my next question for you is how well do you trust a written housekeeping plan? Like, do you put a lot of faith that those are actually happening and getting done, or like?
I think you can tell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can tell. So if you stand there and you're standing down on the production floor and you're looking up at the, like all the open web steel joists and you're like, cool. From standing on the floor to looking up there, it looks like it's about an inch, which probably means it's about 2. That's usually the gauge, right? Like it's usually twice as thick as what you think it is. And I'm like, so if it's 2 inches thick, there's something, you're not cleaning, or, you can look at the walls and see it, or, on, stuff that's sitting around, like, equipment in stores or whatnot that's sitting out in the aisleway, or boxes that nobody's moved. And when you look at it and you're like, well, this dust has been here a while, and it's just, I don't know. You can just kind of tell. One of the things I recommend is I call it the pie plate method for cleaning. And so you just go and buy a whole bunch of pie plates and take a piece of masking tape and write the time and the date that you put them in the location, and then make a map as to where they are. And put them in all kinds of spots that you wouldn't normally think, like so under conveyors and on top of bins and whatnot, and make sure that everyone knows not to touch them. And then when you can't read the tape, then that's when your cleaning that's your cleaning window, right? And so then from that you can figure out whether or not you're cleaning too frequently or not frequently. Everyone likes to do everything on a week-long cycle, where it's like on Monday we do area A, and then Tuesday and rinse and repeat, right? Week after week. Well, area A might need to be cleaned only once every 10 days.
Yeah.
But area B might need to be cleaned every 3rd day.
Oh.
But everyone just does it, rinse and repeat, Monday to Sunday.
I like that. There's a lot of wisdom in that one right there. Make it simple.
Go bake some pies.
Make it simple. Some dust pies.
Well, and I'm like, it doesn't have to be pie plates. I'm like, but they're just cheap. So they're cheap and easy. So it's like you can do. I mean, you could do it really with hunks of cardboard or whatnot, but they tend to be a little more flammable and not necessarily a good things.
Yeah, we shouldn't introduce another hazard where there's already
exactly.
dust.
Well, in pie plates, then they've got the edge so that if you do have any kind of crosswinds or whatnot,
So where have you seen technology come in recently? Do you see any new technologies or innovation kind of changing the game in the dust space? You've been doing this for a little while.
So I'm getting old.
Yeah.
So the big thing, we use it now, the big thing I would say is 3D scanning has changed stuff. So that's more so for system design, right? So instead of just being like, oh yeah, this should fit. Now when you go in and you can 3D scan something, then it's not you can squeeze, if a pipe's going to fit within, the scanner we use is, we're not looking for huge accuracy because we're not doing pipe spools offshore or something like that, right? So we're putting in ducting, so plus or minus 1/4 of an inch, and you can weave things in and around existing stuff. And we've also used it for vessel strength analysis, so you can take and scan your vessel and then build your 3D model out of it. So it's cut down things a lot. The other thing that makes it really handy is we'll take the 3D scan of the existing stuff, put all the 3D design in that scan, and then do like a walkthrough with the client, and then they can be like, oh well, we need to bring a forklift in here, or we need access here for maintenance. And then it's a lot different when you can see it all put together, when it's build it in paper as opposed to build it in steel. It's a lot easier to change it when it's just a bunch of dots on a screen, right?
Oh yeah. Love that. No, we get that. We do some system design stuff and give them approximations of where things are going to go. And then the first thing they say is like, oh, well, actually on Mondays, Thursdays, and Sundays, we pull the forklift over, or we put the lift over here, or we flip this thing upside down. And so you can't put it there. So no, we get the kind of frustration and challenge of working around other people's stuff.
So where do you think it's going from here? Where do you see technology playing into this? Is AI going to have a place in the dust world? Where are we going next?
AI will have a place in everything. So I know in all my spare time in the last couple of years, I've been working on like DHA software. So like how to basically take a DHA and what you need to do and change it into more or less checklists to then have it to create like an 80% automated report. But I think eventually it'll get to a point. So in that 2 years that we were working on it, AI wasn't even around really 2 years ago. Yeah. And now it's gotten to the point where it's probably going to be where you'd walk in with some form of tablet, just kind of show it around, and then it can then spit out whatever your deficiencies are.
Yeah.
I think that'll be the case in terms of assessments. And I don't know how long it'll take to get there because it all depends. Our industry, the dust industry, isn't known for its innovation. It's known for its old dudes thinking that this is the way we do stuff. So I think it'll take a while before it gets to that point, unless some of us young whippersnappers maybe take it on and do it. But I think eventually it'll get to something like that. But in terms of like the design of systems and new system stuff, I don't think it's going to change a whole heck of a lot. I mean, most of the times it's a box with filters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we're walking in to a plant, and this is something that we just covered a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago at this point, and what's the number one thing that we should be telling our clients? Like when they say, hey, we've got a dust problem, what should we be looking for? Or what should they be looking for? How do we handle these things?
The two biggest things with a dust problem I find are hoods and fans. And so if you've got hoods are notoriously undersized and placed in the wrong spot, and fans are notoriously undersized because everyone's trying to do things as cheap as possible. That, and they're also dust collection is really, as a whole, poorly done. And so people tend to forget things when they're sizing a fan. And so you can even have really bad hoods. Don't ever quote me on that. Don't cut that down to a voice clip. But you can have bad hoods. No, Diane said you can have bad. Yeah. So you could have less than ideal hoods. How about that? You could have less than ideal hoods and then have like a really super wonderful fan that's sized maybe even a little over capacity, and your hoods are forgiven because your fan will take up the slack for you. But if your fan, I wanted to write an article that was called "Does Your Fan Suck or Does It Suck?" But I was told I was told that wasn't acceptable. Anyway, so if your fan sucks but doesn't suck, then your whole system will fall apart. So the first thing is to figure out what your fan needs to do and figure out whether your fan's doing it.
Very, very cool. Yeah, one of the more common things, because we're adjacent to all the dust collection stuff, and so we hear a lot and get a lot of questions about it, and so we dig into it a good bit. But we get people who they've updated their process, or they've linked in other parts of the system, but they have not updated their collection design, and so it becomes undersized, or it's not pulling from the right areas at the right speeds or whatever, and so.
Well, and everyone just likes to look at the ducting and be like, oh, we can just slap a duct on there. It'll be fine. Yep. If I see one more vacuum line stuck on a dust collector, I'm sure I'm going to lose my mind. Because everyone's like, well, they're both used for suction. And it's like, yeah, but they're different. They're very different. So.
Yeah. If you design for that may be one thing. But if you just add them on, it doesn't work so well.
No, certainly does not. Yeah, so it's because, so dust collection systems are high volume, low static pressure, and vacuum systems are high static pressure, low volume. So if you put this like 2-inch hose on 40 feet of this 2-inch hose, then you're on your dust collection system, it's like so much static pressure, and your poor fan just coughs and dies.
Yeah, there was a powdered ink company, I believe it was, in the Northeast that had designed a brand new collection system, and it was in like day 2 of operation, and they had an explosion, but it was because they had added all these floor sweeps in and it was pulling all the pressure off, and so they had no suction pressure, and it just everything clogged up and backed up, and then they had a boom. So yeah, you gotta design for that stuff. You can't just go sticking in suction points wherever you want one.
No, but people like to. Yeah. I remember I was doing a presentation, I think at the Powder Bulk Solids show, and I put up, or no, it was a webinar online. Anyway, and I put up like all these bad like pictures of all this like just slapped together ducting, and I was like, this is in your facility. And the fun thing with a webinar is you can make all these outlandish comments and nobody can answer and say anything to you, right? So I was like, this is in your facilities. And then I was like, and if you're telling me you don't have duct tape on your ducting, I was like, you're lying. Like, I know you're lying. Like, yeah. And so one of the guys that I know, he was partaking in the webinar, and he was like, I almost spit my coffee across the room. He was like, I can't believe that you were sitting there just like calling people out. It's like, and no one could defend themselves. And I was like, but it's true. Like, there's so much duct tape and slap-it-on-ism in dust collection that it's scary and sad.
It is. No plant is perfect. Everybody's got fugitive dust. Got to deal with it.
Yeah.
Got to address it. All right. So I think we are about out of time. This has been a ton of fun. I really appreciate you taking time out of your crazy busy schedule, because I know you got a lot going on, because people actually want to work with you as opposed to a lot of other engineers. So, and we would love to have you on again in the future, and hopefully we'll bump into you at a trade show out there somewhere.
Oh yeah,
in the dust world.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, guys. And yeah, I'd love to do it again whenever we can.
And where can people find you and follow you and keep up with all the great articles that you're writing?
So I tend to write a couple of articles a year for Powder Bulk Solids, and then I'm usually at the Powder Show. I usually give a couple of the technical talks sessions there. I also write for Biomass Canada, I think is what it is. Mm-hmm. And I did, I think, 6 articles for them this year. So it was like a whole series of stuff. And I also did some writing, I think, for processing and controls. So I think there was like 3 magazines. It was a busy writing year. I do it all while I sit on planes. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, right? So Diane Cave, yep, and LinkedIn. I don't post on LinkedIn too much because, well, I'm busy.
Yeah. Doing all the other stuff.
Yeah, but I've been meaning to put a post on there about doing hard things, because I just came back about a month ago. I climbed Kilimanjaro.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And yeah, so I think doing hard things in your personal life translates into doing hard things in your professional life, and it makes things easier. So I was going to make a post about that. But
absolutely. That should have been the intro.
Yeah.
You should have started with that. Here's a tip, Diane. Next time you do a podcast, lead with that. Lead with that. Yeah.
Lead with that. And
don't close with that.
I climbed a mountain. So, yeah. So, but otherwise, yeah, you can. I just always kind of pop up. I had this one guy tell me, he was like, every time I turned around last month, he was like, your articles were here, your webinars were there, and he was like, you're just kind of everywhere. So,
well, we'll do our best to make sure they're plastered all over the screen so people can click on them and find them, and we'll put you on our LinkedIn too. But it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks so much, guys. And like I said, and I'll send you the other article that we were talking about.
That's all right. It's great. Right. We'll get it up. All right. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, thanks for watching. Thanks for checking us out again as we attempted to climb combustible dust Kilimanjaro with Diane Cave. So be sure to share it with your friends and family and anyone that deals with combustible dust so they can stay in the loop as well. Give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm Jordan. Thanks for watching the OnAire Podcast.
See you.